Right, we now get to our discussion as we'd promised you all afternoon. Today, of course, the big discussion in the country at the moment is managing the wage bill and, of course, curbing public spending and taming that and bringing it down to a manageable level. Of course, there's been a lot of talk and it was kick-started by the president. We'll be showing you that clip in a moment. But today, I just want you to take a look at who my guests will be as we get ready to start our discussion. Johnson Sakaja could not make it today, but we are in good company this evening. We will have Jasper Mbuki, who's the Legislative Affairs Advisor to the Presidency, and he's on my extreme left. And in the center, of course, is Daniel Ogutu, who is the Vice Chair of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. And the Institute for Social Accountability is well represented today by Wanjiru Gikonyo, who will be joining us. And not just that, we are also live from Kakamega on Checkpoint tonight. Senator Bonnie Halwale will be joining us to give us his views on that statement made by the president during the cabinet retreat. But first, let's set the stage for our discussion. It all started with the president's announcement that he and his deputy and his cabinet would be taking a pay cut. And then, of course, all the reactions started coming in. Take a look at this.
The wage bill in this country is well above that which we can afford. And if truly we are to achieve the objectives of Vision 2030, if truly we are to be able to transform our nation, this is an area that we have to look at and give great thought to.
Sasa wambia upunguze mshahara na bei ya mkate bado iko ile ile. Na kodi ya nyumba ni ile ile. Kodi ya matatu ile ile. Mwambia kama unataka sisi tupunguze mshahara, rudisha chini gharama ya maisha.
Hata ukimuuliza Uhuru anajua payslip yake, anaijua kweli? Kila kitu analipiwa na serikali, ushuru wenu. Chakula serikali, maji serikali, kila kitu.
Kenya does not need populist gestures of inconsequential salary cuts at the top. The problem of the public wage bill will not be handled through populist inconsequential gestures.
All right, and there is that discussion, and it's not just amongst the politicians, but the wider population of Kenya is, of course, discussing this, and the SRC is having that national debate starting tomorrow. So let's get the reactions from our guests. We thank you all for joining us this evening. Ladies first, or guests first. Let's start with, at least for the rest of you, you've been here before. Jasper, we thank you for joining us this evening. Your reaction, of course, to those sentiments, and of course, you can give us an explanation as to how the president arrived at this decision for the pay cut.
Thank you very much. Truly appreciate the opportunity and standing in for my chairman, Sakaja. The gist of this pronouncement was actually not informed by any coercion, any element of coercion, but it was triggered by the obvious reality. The reality that the wage bill is such a huge burden actually to our economy, and for us to be able to work on the base, then we must be able to make the baby steps. And the first baby step is for the president at the head of state and the head of government, together with the executive, which is actually formed of the cabinet secretaries, to be able to have that discussion, to be able to have that first conversation, to be able to just deliberate on this issue. And for me, I think it's such a great beginning, because as we head down tomorrow for the national conversation on this wage bill issue, then the president has actually led the path and leading by example in a very drastic cut, which is actually a huge contribution really back to the economy.
Okay, Wanjiru, back and forth, of course, many people supporting this, others saying it's populist, some saying it's not enough. Some civil servants are afraid that this might trickle down to them. What are your thoughts?
I think there's cases where the top echelon has taken a pay cut when the economic situation demands it. But I think the question we need to ask is, why do we have a problem with the wage bill? And this goes back into the Moi era, when you had a lot of bloat, a lot of people hired on the basis of patronage. In came the Kibaki government, and then that's when the salary scales, this big difference began to emerge, because you had these kind of star cabinet ministers who had really high incomes. You had Parliament pushing up their salaries past this 1 million mark. And then you have the implementation of the Constitution, which has brought in new institutions, and they've pegged themselves on that high standard that was set by Parliament, including, well, the SRC didn't get to the 1 million, but you know, all these bodies, crucial as they are part of this issue. And then you have the Jubilee Manifesto, which, you know, is really a wish list of very many high capital intensive projects.
Right.
So, you know, this is really, you could look at it as a PR effort. And what concerns me is that we'd have expected a more reasoned discussion about what the problem is, and let us look for a solution together, because we're not saying SRC or one institution has the solution to this very big problem. But the concern is that, you know,
so for you,
it's a lot of hype.
Okay.
And you cannot undertake the kind of transformation this country needs based on hype. That's my concern.
Okay, and just what you were talking about, that it's not just the work of the SRC, but I suppose that, Daniel, is what you are hoping to achieve with this debate that starts tomorrow?
Indeed, Yvonne, SRC is just an agent of Kenyans. Kenyans overwhelmingly voted for the Constitution and created the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to be their agent. As an agent, you go back to the principle of matters that touches on them. The discussion about the wage bill, as Wanjiru has put it, is long overdue. The pendulum had overswung long time ago. Even when the commission came in place in 2012, already the wage bill was way above what is ordinary. As a commission, we can't sit in a corner and say we can fix it. Fixing the whole burden of wage bill is a Kenyan affair. It requires total, total participation and acceptance of change, and indeed all Kenyans agreeing to manage the wage bill.
Okay.
When we say all Kenyans, we don't force people to change. People must accept to change.
All right.
Yes.
Let's just mention, and we need to bring in Senator Boni Halwale, who's live with us from Kakamega in just a moment. But a lot of questions about how this pay cut by the president was effected, because we know it's the SRC's work to determine the salary. When he made that announcement last week, were you involved in that decision?
I want to say that that was a voluntary decision that was made at the cabinet level, which has been made all over the world. 4 months ago, Ghana did make a similar decision. We have seen it in many countries of the world. So it's not strange to issues of salary making and when the economy feels threatened. From the position of Salaries Commission, we want to assure all the public servants that their wages and salaries are protected in the Constitution. And by convention, it's clear that we will never vary anybody's earning or salaries without their consent. The clear position here is that the cabinet and the president has led the way in consenting to have a pay cut.
Okay.
And therefore, the campaign that we are putting in now is not about pay cut, but is for long-term solutions on how to manage the wage bill.
Okay, Jasper, very quickly, so that we can bring in the senator
just
in
to make me clarify a bit. Really, it's very unfortunate for us to be able to just cluster the president's decision just to be mere hype. Let's look at holistically as to what the Jubilee government has actually done towards cutting not only the wage bill, but also cutting down recurrent expenditure in government. The first trigger was actually pulled when the president actually announced the task force on parastatal reforms. Let's look at the holistic, all the initiatives that the president has led, groundbreaking initiatives, unprecedented actually in Africa, saying let's merge these 216 parastatals so that you're able to have a lean and efficient government that is able to deliver on the Jubilee government. I'll not shy away from clarifying the obvious fact, the fact that indeed the Jubilee promises are capital intensive, but they're capital intensive initiatives that will transform holistically this country.
Okay.
And we must begin with the first hurdle, and turn it to an opportunity of wiping away the tears of Kenyan people by transforming their lives.
All right, thank you for that. Senator Boni Halwale is joining us from Kakamega, there from our bureau office here. Senator, we thank you so much for joining us this evening. What are your thoughts to the President's pronouncement last week and the drive towards taming the public wage bill?
Listening to what the President said, it is clear to all Kenyans that this matter goes to the very root of the economic management of the affairs of the Republic in particular, and the matter of governance in general. If the President really believes that what he said can change the fortunes of this country, then he's confirming our worst fears that President Uhuru and his deputy are nothing other than ideological and spiritual orphans of Daniel Moi. The economy cannot be fixed simply because a president has taken a pay cut. It's important that the President realizes that this is a multifactorial issue. I look forward to a time when the President appreciates that the corruption in his government that accounts for around 300 billion shillings per year, if it was addressed,
all right, Senator,
then there would be enough money to go around.
Senator, allow me to interject.
Secondly,
carry on.
The issue of government spending is bigger than the salaries that people are paid. There is so much money which is wasted through foreign travel, so much money that is wasted through conferencing, so much money that is wasted through entertainment in general.
All right, Senator, allow me to cut in. You're mentioning some pertinent issues, but some would say, Senator, that it's got to begin somewhere, and thereby the President has begun by having that push to cut down his own salary. He did, of course, mention the issue of foreign travel as well. Some would say he's got to start somewhere, and that perhaps you're criticizing him a bit too much, too early?
Yes, he asked for that job, and therefore he should accept praise and criticism in equal measure. The hard truth is that President Uhuru must accept that there is time for us to call for a national conversation on the current structure of the Constitution. It has created 10 commissions that are being used to fleece the public. It has created too many parliamentary seats that are not necessary. These are things we should talk to as Kenyans.
All right, okay, Senator. And of course, talking about the parliamentary seats, this was a constitution that we all voted for. And, you know, overwhelmingly, perhaps not by the majority, but such is the situation we find ourselves in. But the Senator raises an important point. We recall the Auditor General's report last year talking about over 300 billion shillings that was unaccounted for. Many saying that there's many other ways to do this. Wanjiru, what do you think? Is he doing enough? And in fact, he did ask for a report on this, but we've not heard the results.
Allow me to actually take the first coup in regard to this issue. Sorry, I'm able to make Kenyans appreciate the hard facts actually and the circumstances that even surrounded their cabinet retreat. The gist of this retreat was just to first have an oversight or have a broader appreciation of what have we done in the last year, and besides what we've done in the last year to prepare for the coming year. And the first thing that was very critical is that when we are preparing budgets for all the cabinet or all the ministries, is that we just need to appreciate a ministry is getting 20 billion. What is this 20 billion allocated to? Is it mere flowers? Is it 50% of which is foreign travel? So from that particular point, then you are able to cut down drastically on all the excesses of a government, because we must appreciate that the budget that actually was read in the previous year was actually a continuation of the Kibaki regime.
But Jasper, we're yet to hear about that report.
There will be grand announcements when the cabinet secretary heads to read the fiscal statement for the year 2014-2015. He will be able to break it down and be able to set revolutionary actually steps that have been taken by the government, initiatives that will actually save this country in excess of 30%.
Can you enlighten us what some of those initiatives might be, just to give Kenyans a sense?
I'm not the Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury, and therefore I'm not allowed really to comment into the details. But what I can actually promise and confirm the obvious to the Kenyans is that we are very sensitive to every single coin that goes down in our expenditure.
Can I just jump in there, because we really look forward to that grand announcement.
The first budget, the first Jubilee government.
Give us a chance.
A moment, Jasper. Yes.
We look forward to the issue. The fact of a loss of 300 billion of the budget is not new to this government. It's something that was inherited. So if there's a report that deals with that, great. I'd like to pick up on the issue of the parastatals, because it's linked very much to the issue of devolution.
Absolutely.
And there's widespread thinking that devolution is the cause of this wage pressure.
Yes.
And there are things that needed to have happened that are so fundamental that the government has not dealt with. One was the human resource realignment process. There was a body set up which didn't function, and this government came on board, and 1 year into devolution, counties are laden with staff who were not reviewed, not audited, and directives are being sent out, you cannot hire staff. So there's a mismatch. The parastatal downsizing, yes, it was part of the process, but the issue was, where did those personnel go? Were they redeployed with their technical competence to go and serve the county government? The question is, has national government contracted to allow county governments to expand as they must? The other thing is that there are structures still in place, such as the provincial administration, now called the National Government Administration, that don't have a functional role, and there was a need for that to be reclarified and reabsorbed in line with the new constitution. That didn't happen, so there's a huge amount being spent there that could be better employed, because we're not saying fire people, we are just saying realign them. And then lastly, there's a big onslaught with the funds such as the CDF, funds such as the Women's Fund that are being mooted. And all of these funds have administrative structures that have a personnel cost. Now, these are fundamental issues that we would expect to be dealt with. And it is not too soon. 1 year into governance, we are saying devolution is suffering. And it's suffering because we are not getting any clear directives on these fundamental issues.
Jasper?
Okay, on the issue of devolution, Yvonne, there was the Intergovernmental Budget and Planning Committee, which is actually headed by the Deputy President, bringing on board all the governors and all the county executives dealing with the treasury at the county level. And one thing was actually unanimously agreed, that indeed the transition from the national government to the county government, which was actually led within the interim period by the Transitional Authority, spearheading even the redeployment of the human resource, and various ministries seconding various personnel to every single county in this country, then had obvious HS. And that is why the January cut-off date of transfer of workforce to these counties then had issues even in regard to payroll, because the head counts had to be done, the realignments of the realities on the ground, if indeed we have only seconded ghost workers, of indeed whether they are indeed workers on the ground, then all that realignment is actually a process that is still ongoing.
All right, it's interesting, and we'll come to you and of course just talk about what we're going to be discussing tomorrow and what we'll be hearing. But Jasper, it was interesting before that you said that the government, the presidency is keen on, spending and where every cent goes. But it is not lost on many Kenyans the fact that he made this announcement about a pay cut, a cabinet retreat that was held at a resort that was very expensive. It's about 50,000 shillings a night from what we hear by moderate estimates. And, furthermore, there's that whole issue. And also, this is in contravention. I mean, why not use government facilities? Why not have this at KICC, for example, and have people go home and, at the end of every day? The irony of that was just really stuck in many Kenyans' minds.
I'll obviously not defend the choice of the location, but you and me appreciate that even when KTN is having a corporate event, you can easily bid for huge price reduction. Who would not
was that the case, Jasper?
Would not want to host a president, and by that actually profile your institution? I'm looking at
But we're not talking about profiling an institution, but we're talking about taxpayers' money that is being spent at an expensive location where the president then tells us there's going to be a pay cut and is announcing austerity measures. There's a bit of a
I would any day celebrate a president who is amenable to the idea of even promoting private sector and having government enjoy more tax payments from these corporates. If indeed these organizations are so keen to leverage on the brand that the president brings on board, that the government enjoys huge discounts, like
how
in
about
this case.
How about putting it at KICC, which is owned by the state?
The practicality of hosting an event at KICC, you and me appreciate that you cannot really be able to have a retreat. Let's look at the definition of a retreat. First, to have a retreat, first you must be able to be cut off your normal system. And I think it was a very delicate balancing act for them even actually to come with Mount Kenya Safari Club.
Couldn't have picked a cheaper location?
It was actually way very cheap. Yeah. It was way very cheap.
Based
And
on whose standards?
I'm sure the Cabinet Secretary, the National Treasury, actually the Cabinet Office will be able to table these documents for scrutiny because I'm sure they enjoyed huge discounts.
All right. We'll take your word for
hosting the Cabinet. So it's a way of also giving back to private sector. The partnership that the government is forging together.
Daniel, tomorrow, of course, the discussion is not just, and I know, of course, with the president's statement, then it means everybody is drawn towards his pronouncement of his pay cuts, in his salary. But what is your aim with this debate and conference that starts tomorrow? What are some of the things you hope to hear or bring out?
I want to say that before I talk about tomorrow, already the dialogue is on, even between my two colleagues here.
That's right.
They're already dialoguing. That's why you see me very quiet, because they're putting out the silent issues that Kenyans don't know. We are bringing to Kenyans an opportunity to get to know what is their government doing, what do they think about what the government is doing, and what are the steps going on towards the sustainable wage bill. So from our expectation is that at the end of the day, we'll be able to come up with a document for national policy on wage and remuneration. We know we have not had such for the last 50 years, and all these dialogues crystallize together to bring us to a focal point whereby we can quickly pick this is the direction to go in terms of pay and benefit. So we are bringing to Kenyans, and right at their doorsteps, the first opportunity to contribute to what affects them directly. Every Kenyan feels the heat when development is not going on. They feel the heat if they can't get medical services.
Right.
If they can't take their children to school. We just had an argument the other day whereby national schools are very expensive. That could be subsidized by government.
So all of this is what you hope to discuss tomorrow. Mshahara wako mzigo wangu, I believe, is the theme of this discussion, and so important for every Kenyan. Senator, let's bring you in, though. What would your possible solutions be to this situation? You feel what the president is doing is populist. Tell us what your blueprint would be towards resolving this issue of the wage bill, or indeed public spending in general.
First of all, the president should move the country away from the vicious circle which he started as soon as he became president. The whole of last year, the country was treated with the same conversation. MPs raising their salaries or attempting to do so, Sarah Salem fighting them, and so on. Now, in the second year, he has restarted the same process again. He must stop this vicious circle. The way forward, to me, is the president must accept to manage the economy of this country. If he wants to lower salaries, he should also tell people that he has reduced their house rents, he has reduced their transport costs, he has reduced the food bill, he has reduced school fees. Then that would make sense. And as far as the commissions that are referred to are concerned, they can remain, but we do two things. The Constitution requires that the commissioners should be between 3 and 9. We can now reduce the commissioners to a bare minimum of 3, and what is more, we insist that no commission sits on a continuous basis. They should sit on a need to be basis. For example, the Parliamentary Service Commission doesn't have to sit continuously. The Judicial Service Commission doesn't have. Probably you can leave the Teacher Service Commission, that one can sit continuously. That would make sense. We also want to see the president spending time addressing the issue of corruption, because it is the matter of hemorrhage of public funds that makes the money to be too little to feed the needs of the republic. Otherwise, for him just to be emerging from very expensive hotels that are owned by his friends, we are not going to see a president who wants to help Kenyans to move out of poverty.
All right, thank you very much for your sentiments. At least some sort of solutions on your end, of course, with criticism. As you say, he took the job and he must take the criticism. I'd like us to close our discussion. We'll wind up with you, Jasper, in just a moment. Wanjiru, going forward, do you feel that by that statement alone, now we're just, railroaded in that direction of the president's pay cut, and everybody's now saying, will this affect me? There's lots of people, on our social media who are saying, so what happens to me? I'm a teacher, I'm a nurse, I'm earning a salary, and 20%, someone in fact said, would be suicidal.
I think it would be very unfair to expect that the rank and file would take the pay cut. I think this would possibly be the state officers who have huge earnings. But something that the senator brought up there is the issue of the role of the legislator, because Parliament has pushed this wage bill up, and I believe even in making this announcement, the president is showing a kind of maybe a desperation, because they're wondering, how do we move this Parliament that is hell-bent on really paying themselves
and
very
Parliament
excessively?
Has the legislative role to do that.
They have now got the power of the purse, and they are exercising it in their own interests. And now we've heard the county assemblies also doing the same. So we have a huge problem because of the many historical issues, but also because Parliament is really not legislating in the interest of Kenyans. And one of the gaps that's there right now, if you're looking at a way forward, is we have to educate the citizen. Citizens have to call their MPs, call their senators, call their ward representatives, and tell them we won't have this. You need to stop this foreign travel. You need to stop this issue of per diems and allowances.
Made of that, we're seeing protests, and we don't see that going very far.
We need something more fundamental. The Kenyan does not yet fully appreciate the new dispensation because the civic education effort collapsed. It's unfortunate that this government is fighting civil society, who traditionally would do the civic education. So there's a big lacuna there, because only citizens, by the way, are going to really rein in the bad behavior through corruption, and also the misrepresentation or the misuse and abuse of power by those who hold power in their name.
Okay, Daniel, you're hoping, I guess, that this is what you will get tomorrow, public awareness and people just rallying, so that it's not just seen to be the work of the SRC?
Indeed, like I'd said, SRC alone can't achieve anything. And in attempt for SRC just to bring some little order in the state officer salary became a little ballistic, you all remember. But we know that Kenyans must participate. They must be educated. They must be able to ventilate all these issues and then crystallize them into what can be actioned, so that the issue of saying salaries commission sat in a corner, did X, Y, Z. No, we work for Kenyans. And we are saying tomorrow we are launching the dialogue. The president will grace the occasion. And thereafter we'll also move to the counties. We want all the 47 counties to participate. Let's get the views. And we know Kenyans are intelligent enough to give us the best possible way how to manage the wage bill. Managing wage bill is not necessarily pay cut, but that's one of the methods that can be used. But Kenyans can come up with more viable methods to help the commission address the issue. Okay,
and we'll be looking forward to that discussion that will start tomorrow and indeed go to the rest of the counties. Jasper, final words?
The dilemma of the presidency has been 700,000 civil servants taking in excess of 60% of the national budget. Is that sustainable? The answer is obvious. And I'm sure the president is very upbeat about the prospects we have as a country. And more so, what I'm begging Kenyans to do is to appreciate all the initiatives that His Excellency the President is rolling out. Let's appreciate the reforms in the parastatal sector are geared towards redefining our institutions and making them vehicles for rapid growth. But more so, what is most exciting for me is a prospect we have of a better tomorrow, because government wish list is pegged in the budget. The budget we had in the last year is not a reflection, a true reflection of the Jubilee promise for this country. And therefore, the upcoming budget is going to really cater for every single provision, every single allocation that is in there towards the transformation of the lives of people.
And also, let's look back
at the tenure of His Excellency the President as a finance minister. Let's appreciate the huge gains we were able to make as a country in regard to huge savings, introduction of integrated system that were able to track government costing. I see these steps and more of this coming up in the next year, and I totally believe that we are up for upgrades, exciting future as a country. Okay. And the conversation begins now. Right. And that is the hype the president has actually been able to push. As we head tomorrow for the national dialogue,
yes,
where we'll be able to sit back and say, maybe we need 100 constituencies in this country. Okay. Maybe we need 15 counties.
I'm sure that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
But
so we need 2 commissions. But these are honest conversations that we'll be able to hold as Kenyans. Okay. And indeed, as enshrined in our constitution, sovereignty belongs to the people.
Indeed.
And that's why the people have been empowered by SRC then to engage in these conversations.
Indeed, Jasper, we have to end it at that. Thank you so much for joining us. Jasper Mbiuki, Secretary, Legislative Affairs in the Presidency. Daniel Ogutu, who's the Vice Chair of the SRC. Wanjiru Gikonyo from the Institute for Social Accountability. And many thanks as well to Senator Boni Halwale, who joined us from Kakamega, live right here on Checkpoint. The discussion continues. We wait to see what happens tomorrow. I will be sharing more of your feedback with this. Let's continue to give in the, solutions that we think would help us, because after all, mshahara ni wao lakini mzigo ni wetu, isn't that right? All right, we take a short break. We will be right back.